Let's share the screen. And there's James and the Giant Peach. And let's roll. Chapter 12, James and the Giant Peach. James decided that this was, gotta let somebody in here, Wyatt. James decided that this was most certainly not a time to be disagreeable. So he crossed the room to where the centipede was sitting and knelt beside him. Thank you very much. You are very kind. You have lots of boots. I have a lot of legs and a lot of feet. 100 to be exact.
There he goes again,
the earthworm cried, speaking for the first time.
He simply cannot stop telling lies about his legs. He doesn't have anything like 100 of them. He's only got 42. The trouble is that most people don't bother to count them. They just take his word. And anyway, there's nothing marvelous, Centipede, about having lots of legs.
Poor fellow, the centipede said, whispering in James' ear. He's blind. He can't see how splendid I look.
In my opinion, the really marvelous thing is to have no legs at all and to be able to walk just the same.
You call that walking? Cried the centipede. You're a slitherer, that's what you are. You just slither along.
I glide, said the earthworm primly.
You are a slimy beast.
I am not slimy beast. I am a useful and much-loved creature. Ask any gardener you like. And as for you,
I am a pest, the centipede announced, grinning broadly and looking around the room for approval. He's so proud of that, the ladybug said, smiling at James, though for the life of me I can't understand why. I am the only pest in this room, cried the centipede, still grinning away. Unless you count old green grasshopper over there, but he's long past it now. He is too old to be a pest anymore. The old green grasshopper turned his huge black eyes upon the centipede and gave him a withering look. Young fellow, he said, speaking in a deep, slow, scornful voice, I have never been a pest in my life. I am a musician. Hear, hear. James. Your name is James, isn't it? Yes. Well, James, have you ever in your life seen such a marvelous, colossal centipede as me? I certainly haven't. How on earth did you get to be like that? Very peculiar. Very, very peculiar indeed. Let me tell you what happened. I was messing about in the garden under the old peach tree, and suddenly a funny little green thing came wriggling past my nose. Bright green it was, and extraordinarily beautiful. And it looked like some kind of tiny stone or crystal. Oh, but I know what that was, cried James. It happened to me too. And me. Suddenly there were little green things everywhere. The soil was full of them.
I actually swallowed one,
the earthworm declared proudly. So did I. I swallowed 3. But who's telling this story anyway? Don't interrupt. It's too late to tell stories now, the old green grasshopper announced. It's time to go to sleep. I refuse to sleep in my boots. How many more are there to come off, James? I think I've done about 24 so far. Then that leaves 8 to go. 22, not 80, shrieked the earthworm.
He's lying again.
The centipede roared with laughter. Stop pulling the earthworm's leg, the ladybug said. This sent the centipede into hysterics. Pulling his leg, he cried, wriggling with glee and pointing at the earthworm. Which leg am I pulling? You tell me that. James decided that he rather liked the centipede. He was obviously a rascal, but what a change it was to hear somebody laughing once in a while. He had never heard Aunt Sponge or Aunt Spiker laughing aloud in all the time he had been with them. We really must get some sleep, the old green grasshopper said. We've got a tough day tomorrow ahead of us, so would you be kind enough, Miss Spider, to make the beds? Chapter 13. A few minutes later, Miss Spider had made the first bed. It was hanging from the ceiling, suspended by a rope of threads at either end, so that actually it looked more like a hammock than a bed. But it was a magnificent affair, and the stuff that it was made of shimmered like silk in the pale light. I do hope you'll find it comfortable, Miss Spider said to the old green grasshopper. I made it as soft and silky as I possibly could. I spun it with gossamer. That's a much better quality thread than the one I use for my own web. Thank you so much, my dear lady, the old green grasshopper said, climbing into the hammock. Ah, this is just what I needed. Good night, everybody. Good night. Then Miss Spider spun the next hammock, and the ladybug got in. After that, she spun a long one for the centipede, and an even longer one for the earthworm. And how did you like your bed? she said to James when it came to his turn. Hard or soft? Well, I like it soft very much. Thank you very much. For goodness sake, get on with my boots, the centipede said. You and I are never going to get any sleep at this rate, and kindly line them up neatly in pairs as you take them off. Don't just throw them over your shoulder. James worked away frantically on the centipede's boots. Each one had laces that had to be untied and loosened before it could be pulled off. And to make matters worse, all the laces were tied up in the most complicated knots that had to be unpicked with fingernails. It was just awful. It took about 2 hours, and by the time James had pulled off the last boot of all and had lined them up together in a row on the floor, 21 pairs altogether, the centipede was fast asleep. Wake up, centipede, whispered James, giving him a little dig in the stomach. It's time for bed. Oh, thank you, my dear child, the centipede said, opening his eyes. Then he got down off the sofa and ambled across the room and crawled into his hammock. James got into his own hammock, and oh, how soft and comfortable it was compared with the hard, bare boards that his aunts had always made him sleep upon at home. Lights out, said the centipede drowsily. Nothing happened. Turn out the lights, he called, raising his voice. James glanced around the room, wondering which of the others he might be talking to, but they were all asleep. The old green grasshopper was snoring loudly through his nose. The ladybug was making whistling noises as she breathed, and the earthworm was coiled up like a spring at one end of the hammock, wheezing and blowing through his open mouth. As for Miss Spider, she's made a lovely web for herself across one corner of the room, and James could hear her crouching right in the very center of it, mumbling softly in her dreams. I said, turn out the light, shouted the centipede. Are you talking to me? Of course I'm not talking to you, you ass, the centipede answered. That crazy glowworm has gone to sleep with her light on. For the first time since entering the room, James glanced up at the ceiling, and there he saw a most extraordinary sight. Something that looked like a gigantic fly without wings, at least 3 feet long, was standing upside down upon its 6 legs in the middle of the ceiling, and the tail end of this creature seemed to be literally on fire. A brilliant greenish light as bright as the brightest electric bulb was shining out of its tail and lighting up the whole room. Is that a glowworm? Asked James, staring at the light. It doesn't look like a worm of any sort to me. Of course it's a glowworm. At least that's what she calls herself. Although actually you are quite right. She isn't a worm at all. Glowworms are never worms. They are simply lady fireflies without wings. Wake up, you lazy beast. But the glowworm didn't stir. So the centipede reached out of his hammock and picked up one of his boots from the floor. Put out that wretched light, he shouted, hurtling the boot up at the ceiling. The glowworm slowly opened one eye and stared at the centipede. There is no need to be rude. All in good time. Come on, or I'll put it out for you. Oh, hello, James, the glowworm said, looking down and giving James a little wave and a smile. I didn't see you come in. Welcome, my dear boy, welcome, and good night. Then click, and out went the light. James Henry Trotter lay there in the darkness with his eyes wide open, listening to the strange sleeping noises that the creatures were making all around him, and wondering what on earth was going to happen to him in the morning. Already, he was beginning to like his new friends very much. They were not nearly as terrible as they looked. In fact, they weren't really terrible at all. They seemed extremely kind and helpful in spite of all the shouting and arguing that went on between them. Good night, old green grasshopper, James whispered. Good night, ladybug. Good night, Miss Spider. But before he could go through them all, he had fallen fast asleep. Chapter 14. We're off, someone was shouting. We're off at last. James woke up with a jump and looked about him. The creatures were all out of their hammocks and moving excitedly around the room. Suddenly, the floor gave a great heave as though an earthquake were taking place. Here we go, shouted the old green grasshopper, hopping up and down with excitement. Hold on tight. What's happening? Cried James, leaping out of his hammock. What's going on? The ladybug, who was obviously a kind and gentle creature, came over and stood beside him. In case you didn't know it, we're about to depart forever from the top of this ghastly hill that we've all been living on for so long. We're about to roll away inside this great, big, beautiful peach to a land of what? Oh, never you mind. But nothing could be worse than this desolate hilltop and those 2 repulsive aunts of yours. Hear, 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 they all shouted. You may not have noticed it, the ladybug went on, but the whole garden, even before it reaches the steep edge of the hill, happens to be on a steep slope. And therefore, the only thing that has been stopping this peach from rolling away right from the beginning is the thick stem attaching it to the tree. Break the stem and off we go. Watch it, cried Miss Spider as the room gave another violent lurch. Here we go. Not quite, not quite. At this moment, our centipede, who has a pair of jaws as sharp as razors, is there on the top of the peach, nibbling away at that stem. In fact, he must be nearly through it, as you can tell from the way we're lurching about. Would you like me to take you under my wing so that you won't fall over when we start rolling? Oh, that's very kind of you, but I think I'll be all right. Just then, the centipede stuck his grinning face through a hole in the ceiling and shouted, I've done it. We're off. We're off. We're off. The journey begins, shouted the centipede. And who knows where it will end, muttered the earthworm.
If you have anything to do with it, it can only mean trouble.
Nonsense. We are now about to visit the most marvelous places and see the most wonderful things. Isn't that so, centipede? There is not knowing what we shall see, cried the centipede. The centipede likes to tell stories in rhyme and in song, so here we go. We may see a creature with 49 heads who lives in the desolate snow, and whenever he catches a cold which he dreads, he has 49 noses to blow. We may see the venomous pink-spotted scrunch who can chew up a man with one bite. It likes to eat 5 of them roasted for lunch and 18 for supper at night. We may see a dragon, and nobody knows that we won't see a unicorn there. We may see a terrible monster with toes growing out of tufts of his hair. We may see the sweet little bitty bright hen, so playful, so kind and well-bred. And such beautiful eggs, you just boil them and then they explode and they blow off your head. I knew it, a neuroceros. Surely you'll see, and that enormous and horrible gnat, whose sting when it stings you goes in at the knee and it comes out through the top of your hat. We may even get lost and be frozen by frost. We may die in an earthquake or tremor. Or nastier still, we may even be tossed on the horns of a furious dilemma. But who cares? Let us go from this horrible hill. Let us roll, let us bowl, let us plunge. Let's go rolling and bowling and spinning until we're away from old Spiker and Sponge. 1 second later, slowly, insidiously, oh, most gently, the great peach started to lean forward and steal into motion. The whole room began to tilt over and all the furniture went sliding across the floor and crashed against the far wall. So did James and the ladybug and the old green grasshopper and Miss Spider and the earthworm, also the centipede, who had just come slithering quickly down the wall. The end of chapter 14. We'll stop the share. And I'm going to pull up our daily work assignment. There it is. And I'll give you a chance to ask questions in just a minute. All right, so chapters 12, 13, and 14. You've got all the characters written here. You don't have to do full sentences here, just words that describe their personality. Every one of them has a very distinct personality, especially that centipede. He really is a rascal. Our spelling and vocabulary words, are right here, 12 of them: alliteration, assonance, couplet, hyperbole, metaphor, onomatopoeia, personification, refrain, rhyme, simile, stanza, and symbol. And we'll be going through those again during our Zoom meetings tomorrow. But I will announce again, please check your private channel, because I will be assigning a time and a day for you to share something that you've accomplished in online school. It will be your chance to put on a little show for all of us. Editing, there was a Native American who became an astronaut, and he took arrowheads into space. So that's our editing theme this week. You have a little slide share show to watch on review of simple, compound, and complex sentences. Plus there's a quiz of 20 questions. Just let me know how you did. On your independent reading, how important is the setting in your fiction book to the plot of the story? Also, for nonfiction, I have assigned a Mac and Via book, which is a clever app, and I'll give you the directions for that when we get down there to the ancient Greek session. But the book is called Long Ago and Far Away, Ancient Rome. It's really, really good. Anderson, please quit putting on a show with your magic 8 ball. Thank you very much. on poetry. Now, you got to really read these directions carefully, because when you click on the app Learn 360 after you log into Clever, you'll go there and there's a search box. If you copy this all and place it into the search box and press enter, this video will come up. It's 42 minutes long. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Just around 8 or 9 minutes a day, and it goes through all the elements of poetry, and it helps you with your poetry writing, and it's a really funny video. I think you'll like it a lot. Gifted thinking skills, 3 questions. They're not easy. Think through them. I've got the answers there from last Friday. And here again is the directions for that long ago and far away in ancient Rome. You have a brain pop video to watch on ancient Rome. I have included, to wrap up ancient Greece, Mr. Nicky's song about ancient Greece. It's based upon the same, it's based upon the song. It's all about that bass. So I think you'll like that. You like Mr. Nicky. Geography games. And you've got family fun and fun fact of the day. So let's stop sharing there. And if you have a question about anything, please unmute yourself and ask away. Who has a question about something or something they need to share? Anybody have a question? Hey, Max.
Hi, Mr. Bagby.
Is Peyton here in the room?
No.
Let's see her.
Only one missing.
Is Swati here?
Yep.
Yes, she is. Thank you. Is Arjun here?
No.
Don't see Arjun.
We have 15 people in our class.
Wyatt's here. Is Mila here? Yeah, Mila's here, isn't she? Yes.
I called
Oh, we
Arjun.
had
The only
14.
people I'm missing then are Peyton and Arjun, right?
I called Arjun this morning on Discord, and he said, and I told him to pick up the Zoom meeting, and he said okay, and he said he would be here. So I don't.
Well, I'm recording it. I'm going to stop recording now.